All right, good evening. Tonight's video notes come from chapter 11.3 in our text, and it is about other types of inheritance. So lately we've been working with very simple Mendelian genetics, dominant versus recessive, and we've also noticed that there's only one allele that represents a trait. So for instance, we choose that allele with a letter to represent it. However, there's exceptions. We know more about genetics now, and things are a little bit more complicated. Some alleles are neither dominant nor recessive. Many genes exist in several different forms, so there's multiple alleles to represent this. And then there are many traits that are produced by the interaction of several genes, so more than one type of gene to control one trait. Okay, so the first different pattern we're going to look at is called incomplete dominance. And so instead of the dominant allele being completely dominant over the recessive, it's more of a mix. Neither is more dominant than the other. And so when you have a heterozygous phenotype, okay, or genotype, the phenotype is going to lie somewhere between the two. So for instance, if you take red and white, neither of them are dominant over each other, so they get a blend. The heterozygous individual, their phenotype is a blend, and it's just like mixing paint. Red, white, you get pink. And this happens a lot in flowers. Okay, so let's do a cross. So let's take a look here. We have a red carnation, and it is incompletely dominant over white. Okay, so we're going to cross a red and a white to give or to show all the different possible outcomes of offspring. I want you guys to change in your notes. So you have big R is going to equal red, and little r equals white. So you got to change that. Okay. All right, so a red carnation is going to have this genotype, big R, okay? And a white carnation is going to have little r. And so when we show all the different possible outcome of offspring, okay, all of them end up being heterozygous, and since this is incomplete dominance, all of them will be a blend of red and white, meaning they will be a pink color. Okay. So add this to your notes that the phenotype for incomplete dominance is a blend of the two. Okay, just like this, red and white, you get pink. Okay. Another type that's somewhat similar but different is called codominance, and that's when both alleles are clearly expressed. So we see this in certain patterns, and fur is a very common one. Both alleles show up equally. Okay. And you see this a lot, like I mentioned, in fur, and you also see this sometimes in flowers, where some of the cells will produce the red color and some of them will produce the white color, so you get this sort of spotted look. Instead of a blend, you get a spotted look. Okay. So for instance, we have a horse, okay, and horses could be, and I want you to change these in your notes. Give you a second to pause to change these in your notes, make that change. So you could have a red horse, and that's its genotype. You could have a white horse with that genotype, or you could have a roan horse, a heterozygous individual, and that means every other hair is red, white, red, white. So some of it's red, some of it's white, and so you get this kind of every other kind of spotted if you were to look really closely. So we have a red and white horse, and we're crossing it with a red horse. So a red and white horse is that roan horse. So that is that individual. That's the red and white person or horse. And then a red horse is going to be big R, okay, according to the genotype. So if we're going to show all the possible outcomes of offspring, they could have a completely red horse as a baby. They would have a roan. Okay. They also could have a red as well, or a roan. So there's no chance that they'll get a white horse. They'll either be red or that roan, where every other is red, white, red, white. Okay, another type is called multiple alleles, and so these are traits that are controlled with 3 or more alleles. So a single gene can have more than one type of allele to represent it. So for instance, we've looked at genes that had just one type of allele. For instance, we would choose big T, little t for tall and short. However, you can have multiple alleles with a range of phenotypes. So an example of this would be our blood type. Okay, we've probably heard that you could have AB, or O blood type. And you still only inherit two alleles, but the possible alleles you can inherit are more than one type. So here's a whole range of different types of genotypes an individual can be based on their blood type. It's important to note, maybe make a little note in your notes, that O is recessive and AB is dominant. And that will make sense when we do a Punnett square for blood type. Okay. Blood type, if you may or may not know, represents the antigens that you have on your blood cells. A means you have antigen A. AB means you have both A and B antigens, and then O means you have no antigen. So this is kind of why we reject blood types that are not of our own if we were to get a transfusion. Okay, so let's try a cross. Now this written here in red is not in your notes. You don't have to write it down, but I just wanted to give you guys some background on why we're going to use the letters that we do. So use a non-representative letter to represent the maternal and paternal chromosomes, and then you put the alleles as a superscript above the letter that you choose. So this will make sense when we do this. So we're going to use the letter I to represent the dominant and recessive chromosomes, and then we're going to use A, B, and O to represent the blood types. Okay, so if a person is a B blood type, and we'll say they're heterozygous B, meaning that they have one dominant, remember I mentioned last time that B is dominant, A and B is dominant. They have one dominant allele, chromosome, and then they have a recessive chromosome with that recessive gene for O blood type. And we're going to cross it with an A blood type, A, okay, but they're heterozygous A. Oops, I did this wrong, right? We got to represent it with an I first. Okay, so I represents the chromosome. It's a dominant chromosome because it's A. And then it's heterozygous, meaning it has a recessive chromosome with the O blood type. Okay, so then you'd fill this in kind of like you do with a normal Punnett square. So this individual, this offspring, is going to inherit an A from mom or dad, and then a B from mom. Okay, so this person's blood type, okay, is AB. All right, they're both dominant. Okay, also this person's blood type inherits an A from the dad and a recessive O from the mom. And since O is recessive, the blood type is only going to be A. With this one, same kind of idea, dominant B from the mom, and then the recessive O from the father. And so this person's only going to be blood type B. And then this person receives both recessive chromosomes, meaning that it is blood type O. Okay. All right, and then another pattern called sex-linked. And this has to do with genes that are located on the X chromosome only. Okay, so we have 23 different pairs of chromosomes, or 46 total. We have 2 sex chromosomes, meaning these are the chromosomes that represent our sex. So for females, you have 2 X chromosomes, meaning you inherited an X from mom and you inherited an X from dad. Males have an X from mom and a Y from dad, and so that's what makes them male. Now, if you're representing a gene that is sex-linked, you only put it on the X chromosome, not the Y. It's going to stay blank. So for instance, a common sex-linked trait is color blindness. And so if you, and it's a recessive trait, it's sex-linked recessive. So if you are normal, okay, that means you have the dominant allele, and if you are a carrier, or if you have it on your chromosome, you have a recessive C. Okay, so here are all the different possible genotypes with their phenotypes, which is already written down in your notes. So keep that in mind when we do a Punnett square. Okay, So let's try this Punnett square. We have a male who is colorblind and a female who is a carrier for colorblind, but is not colorblind at all. So the first thing I would do in this type of problem is to come up with the genotypes. So the female's genotypes, or mom's genotypes. Well, we know mom is female, right? So it's XX, 2 X chromosomes. And this is linked to the X chromosome, so this person's going to have 2 alleles because it has 2 X's. She's a carrier but not colorblind. That means that she has one dominant gene and a recessive. And so the recessive, or the dominant, cancels out the recessive. So this person carries colorblindness. She could pass it off to offspring, but she doesn't have colorblindness. Dad, on the other hand, is XY, okay? And he is colorblind, so he's going to have that recessive allele. And he can't be a carrier because he has it or he doesn't, right? He has it and he doesn't have another X chromosome to cancel it out. So males are either they're colorblind or they're not. They can't be carriers. So let's see what their children might be. Okay, so we'll put mom on top, dominant, the recessive, carrier. Dad is colorblind. Remember, we don't draw anything on the Y because it's sex linked. It's linked to the X chromosome. Okay, so this girl, okay, this girl in this cross, she's gonna have the dominant and recessive. So she's a carrier for colorblindness, but she doesn't have colorblindness. However, this girl here, she received both recessive alleles on her X chromosomes, so she has colorblindness. This male gets the dominant from mom, and then nothing from dad. He just gets the Y chromosome from dad. So this girl, or this boy, is not colorblind. However, this boy, or this boy is going to be colorblind because it received the recessive allele from mom and then nothing from dad because it's the Y chromosome. Okay. So what this shows here is that men have a higher chance of becoming colorblind because they only inherit one chromosome. So there's no chance for them to just be carriers like girls can. Okay. And here's a couple examples of colorblind tests. You can look them up online to determine if you're colorblind or not. There's different types of colorblind based on the cones that you have in your eyes. But as you can see, men have a higher prevalence of colorblindness. So take a moment to talk about why. My light turned off. There we go. Okay. All right, so another example of sex-linked would be hemophilia, which is a genetic disorder, meaning that the blood takes longer to clot. One of the last few is polygenic traits, and so these are traits that refer to, or genes that have, or traits that have many genes that control the trait. Okay, and so poly meaning many, genic meaning genes. Okay, so examples would be your eye color. So let's see this in action here. So don't write this down, but eye color is an example of a polygenic trait, meaning that there are several genes to influence the color of the eyes. Okay, so for instance, eye color, look at all the different possible genotypes for eye color, which is why we have a range of different phenotypes for eye color. There are, in this case, 4 genes that control the trait for eye color. Skin color is another example. You see a range of skin colors because of the multiple genes and all the different potential allele combinations. Okay. The last different way that phenotypes can be expressed is through genes and how they are expressed with different environmental factors. So the environment can affect gene expression, and then the individual's phenotype can be determined by its environment. And we'll see some examples. So for instance, when the temperature increases, these western white butterflies have different wing colors based on the temperature, and that has to do with the temperature influencing the expression of genes when they get turned on and turned off in the cells. Okay. Other examples, foxes, Arctic foxes, they turn white in the winter, so when the temperature drops, their genes turn on and produce a different phenotype. Okay. Another really fun one is with hydrangeas. If you plant them in acidic soil, their genes turn the blue phenotype on, or if you put it in basic soil, you get the pink phenotype. Okay? There is no Google form tonight, just study and